Hi there, welcome to part 2 of my video of the Mopar 727, and here we have a master kit. I will just briefly show you what's inside. Now there are some parts of this that is not included, like the rear band was not included in the master kit. The bearing for the outgoing shaft and the filter, those things were not included in the master kit, so had to be ordered separately. And then we have gaskets, sealing gaskets, the front band, the pump bushing, and output axle bushing. And then of course the clutches and steel rings. These are standard and there are 4 each of them. The front, there are different thickness, so you have to keep that in mind. So that's what's inside the master kit. I will start with the bushing for the oil pump. Not really much to it. Little bit more. There you have it. So what you can see, it's now in the proper place. I hope you can see it in this angle. What we aim for is to get it deep enough so that we can use a tool and make 2 marks here to secure it so that it wouldn't move. What we also want to do is test it with a converter. If we would be unlucky and made some kind of damage to it, then it would not fit here. No problem. It feels real good and tight. The next part is a sealer. The next thing to be fitted here is the sealer. I'm going to apply a very thin coat of silicone. That would do it. Now we have the sealing here, the sealer installed. It's not flush, it's a little bit above the surface here. Let's continue with the pump. This is the downside. Doesn't matter which position it goes, just try to remember which side was up and which was down. these are the two sealing rings here in the groove. Here are the new one. There is a trick to install it. When it's in the groove, you cannot just push it together. You have to pull one above on the other and then down into the groove. And then they will lock like this. So when it's done, it looks like this. That's about it with the pump. The pump is ready and done. Next out here is our front clutch. And the first thing we assemble is this part with the springs. And there is a sealer here that needs to be replaced. A new one comes in the master kit. Looks like this. And it goes in this direction, down. There you have it. What happens down there is that this sealer has a specific profile and it needs to be installed like this. What happens when you try to get it down into the groove, it flips over like this and tries to fit into the groove in this direction. That can't happen. It has to be installed in the correct position, and that is this way. So if you just try to push it down and it goes into the groove, let's say head first, then it will flip on you and be installed like this, and that's wrong. It has to be in the correct position. I don't know, it's not easy to see here, but this is anyhow the position we want. The next one is this larger, and it goes here in this way. We have to keep in mind all the time the correct position of these sealings. That's why I don't remove them before I clean, because then I forget in which direction they go. But now it's easy to remember. There you have it. I don't have any specific transmission assembly lube. I just use the ordinary transmission fluid. There you have it. The same thing here. When we are pushing down the piston, the sealer is in this direction. If it doesn't get down in the position correctly, this will flip and turn in this way, and it will not seal properly. We have to be careful that the sealer goes down into the bore like this, and it does not stuck on the edge and flips over like this. So that's a little bit tricky part. We use a little bit of force, but not too much. To take a hammer and hammer it down would for sure make this edge to flip over. That's why I try to press it into the groove as much as possible, and then gently get it down there. Now we have our springs. They are with one between and two between in two positions. There you have it. This is the way to put 6 springs in there. We have our locking ring here. All seals. It might take you 1 or 2 or 3 attempts with these guys. And then we take the locking ring. These have to stay out of the way for the locking ring. Now, piston is there, clutches is the next thing to install. And here we have the new clutches in the package. I want to clean this. I think they are rather clean, but I will anyhow clean them again and then put all the friction discs in a little tub and let it soak with the transmission fluid. Now the clutches has been soaking here for a while. I have cleaned all the parts. We start with one in the bottom, and then a clutch. So the front clutch is assembled. What it remains to do is to check the clearance, and that is the clearance between the last disc here and the clip here. And those, even though they look apparently the same, they are different. This one that goes in the rear clutch is thinner than the one in the front, the locking ring. So this is used in the rear, and in the front the thicker one. Otherwise there is a play in the locking ring in itself. I can fit these amount of under between the locking ring and the last disc here. That's rather tight. So we are at 2.35 millimeter, and that is less than 100 thousandths. For the 383 and 440, the clearance is 25,000 up to 125 thousandths of an inch. And 2.35 millimeter is something 92 thousandths. So we are well within the specifications. So that will be fine. So setting this apart, and now taking care of the rear clutch. Looks like something like this, and here is a piston with some seals, and these have to be replaced. Again, that's this one. And the same thing goes here. Pay attention to the way it is installed, so we don't put it backward. Let's try to clean up also this groove. That's it. So there it goes. The same thing as in the other clutch, I want to be really careful to not force it down, because the lip of the sealing is going to go inside here and not like flipping or overturning. If I use a hammer and force it, it might cause the sealing to not seat properly. There you have it. I saw there was still some dust there. I have been cleaning this very thoroughly, but you can never clean too much, I guess. Here is like a distance ring. And then we have the wavy locking ring. This is a very special locking ring because it's all wavy. I just use my thumbs to get this seating correctly. And then it's time for this piece. Again, 4 clutches, but they are thinner. So if by any chance you have a totally wrong gap at the end when you measure the gap, chances are that you have mixed the clutches. If there are holes here in the axle and you can carefully by using some air pressure, carefully check that it works, but just carefully. And it works. Let's check the gap again. Exactly 2 millimeters. So we are again well within specification. Now you should try to align the discs. That will make it easier to install it. In this end we have 2 rings here that has to be replaced. Again, one, this is the top ring, it's the same construction as we saw before. Now, just to summarize, I have replaced those 2 ceilings there, the inner ceiling here, outer ceiling here, and it has 4 clutches. Those are thinner than the clutches on the front clutch, and also the locking ring is a little bit thinner than the one in the front clutch. And then I tested with the gauges, and it's less than 100,000th of an inch of play. And chances are, if you are totally out of the specifications for the play, maybe you have mixed up the different clutches with the front clutch or the locking ring. So now clutches are done, the pump is done. Those 2 parts here are not, there is not much we can do with them other than clean them. And there are no ceilings or things like that in them, so they just go there and wait for assembly. Now it's time to make the assembly. So, starting the assembly, we have the casing here, and in the rear I did not remove this sprag or whatever you call it, but I have cleaned the parts. These are not replaced now. It's got a, we need another one thing first, and that's this ring. I will try to install them from this direction so that you can see. All these springs and rollers are going to centrate this ring rather well. One spring and one roll. There you have it. Band. This is the axle that goes in here, but it has a sealing here and we need to replace that one. It should come in the kit. Old one. I use some grease that will work. We cannot fit it now. I just testing because we need to be able to put the piston down here, but can stay there for now. So next thing is our axle. But before that, we need to replace some parts in our governor. Upper ring. Pay attention to the locking ring to the sealing rings here on the governor, because the one in the bottom is like the one we saw before with a closing device there. Starting the assembly, we have the casing here, and in the rear I did not remove this sprag or whatever you call it, but I have cleaned the Now we're going to install the rear part of the transmission on top of the axle here. What I have done outside of the view from the camera is I have replaced the bushing here. And unfortunately the battery on the phone was dead and it didn't record it. So, but basically it's not that big deal. We just installed the bushing there. I heated this a little bit with my heat gun, and then I hammer in the bushing. The old one I saw the part with this tool. I don't know what I did with it, but I cut it with a blade, and because I don't have any with exactly correct dimension here, so that's what I had to do. I open it with a saw and then heated this up, hammer in the bushing, and then the sealer here. It's not that big deal. For the rest, the governor here there are a number of things to check. Governor is installed, it has new sealings, the lock ring here is in place, as well as the lock ring there, and the snap ring here, and then we have additionally 3 snap rings, one here, one there, and one there. Then we're good to go. This bearing comes in different variations. It's a standard bearing. I think it's called 603 or something like that. The problem is that this groove can be in different size, and the locking ring that is inside here, it's about 2 millimeter wide or a little bit more. It means that it will not fit into a bearing with a standard groove here. Let's see if I have, maybe I don't have it. Yes, I have it. Here is a standard ring that is not as wide as this. So a bearing with this standard will not fit here, and that you will discover when you try to get the locking ring here into the groove. If you happen to have installed a bearing with a groove that is not wide enough, then you will have a problem to make this to fit. I just apply a very, very thin coat of sealer here. Not much, actually. The new gasket. There we go. What we want now is to get the locking ring into the groove. So we have to lift the axle a little bit and use a screwdriver to just pull it down into the position. There it is. to check, and it's 24 foot-pound. I had to check the book, and it's 24 foot-pound, and that is equivalent to 32 Newton meter of torque. Next one is the speedometer gear, and I have replaced the O-ring inside there, and also this one, and goes in here. You have to count the number of teeth, and this one has 27 teeth, and then we have markings here indicating where it should be. So 27 to 31 is here, you can see, and that should point in the direction of this little dot. So put it in, and I use a little fork there. You have it. Yes, it does rotate. Means it works. Now it's time to assemble the inside. The axle is there, everything is in place. So now it's time to start with the inside. there we have it. Now let's look at the final assembly of the rotating parts here. And I find it easily to install these parts with the transmission standing up, not in this position. But I will do it in this position, and so that you probably will be able to see here what's happening. I take a small screwdriver and I try to align the clutches as good as possible. There you go. Look like that. And then we have a very important part here. Going on the axle here is the thrust washer. It's a fiber washer. Goes there on the axle. It's very important. If you forget that, you will hear, when you try to rotate the parts, you will hear something is touching inside this one, and so that is absolutely necessary. There you have them, all four of them. You know that because the edge here is flush with this edge. I hope you can see it in the camera. When this is just a little bit within the edge here, then you know every disc is in the correct place. You should be able to rotate everything. It should work with no strange sound. Now for the next part, we have another fiber washer, a thrust washer that goes inside there. We can apply a little bit of grease here, not much, just to make it stick to the surface here. And that goes against this surface here. The same again, small screwdriver, and try to align all the clutches. I do it like this with the screwdriver. Try to align them and try to have them in the center. This one is a little bit more tricky. Let's see how it goes. Usually it takes me 2 or 3 attempts before I get it. If it doesn't work, you take it out. Try to center them again. And do it all over. And there we have it. You know when it is in the correct position when these parts goes beyond. This hair has to go beyond the edge of the drum here. Shouldn't be more than 2-3 millimeters wide gap there. Then it is okay. We don't want it to drop out now. So now what we need is the band. Now the gasket. And here we have the last thrust washer. It's in total 3 thrust washer made of steel or brass and 2 made of this fiber material. Now to check if everything is okay, we take a couple of bolts is not correct with the first two bolts. We just pull them by hand. And check if everything moves like it should. No problem. No scratching sound, nothing strange. Everything seemed to work as it should. Now we are going to install these. We start with this one. I have replaced the sealer here. It was so brittle, it broke in two pieces. It's so hard and very, very brittle. So looks rather good. Then we have the spring and this ring and the locking ring. I will use this tool to put this together, and it requires a little bit of force. Check that this surface is rather flat and not dinged up. The reason for that is that this edge can go into the there is an edge here for the locking ring, but sometimes this goes into the groove, and no matter how much you try to force it down, it will just bend and be destroyed. So here we have to be a little bit careful so that it is centrated. It does not take much force, just a little bit to keep it there. Then you should check that it is not blocking the groove for the locking ring. there you have it. Voila. Does it work? We can test it carefully. Oh yes, it works. I hope you can see. Very careful with the air pressure. Remember this little piece now goes in. So it was a bit of a struggle to get that piece in there, the little distance. And the reason is that with the new band there is not much room. Now it's the next one. Last time the battery died in the camera, I was installing this. I was mostly done by getting this locking ring in place, and then I installed this lever. It's installed by pushing in an axle here, and there is a plug here, you see it, and you just attach the plug there, and I use some thread sealer on this plug so it won't leak. So now that is in place, the band is here. I've installed the adjusting nut here, a bolt. You didn't see that because the camera battery died. Then we need this little thing here, goes on the plug. The last part of the assembly of the front band includes these parts and this one. So we install the bolt. This is the adjusting bolt that goes into the transmission together with this little part, a distance, I don't know what you call it. There you have it. And then in the front of the band, there we have it. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Let's adjust it a little bit by hand. Now let's try with the compressed air carefully, very carefully, in this hole to see if it operates the band. It does. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. And now we need to tighten the band. It should be tightened to specification, so it's about 50 pound-inch. So we tighten it 50 pound-inch, and then we back it off 2 turns. That's about 50 pound-inch. And then we back it off 2 turns. 1 and 2. And then we adjust the locking nut to close it. Let's see. Works. And then we adjust the rear band, the same procedure, about 50 pound-inch. We have to back off the locking nut so it doesn't interfere with our...
Pappa, måste bara kissa.
Yes. The cameraman had to go to the bathroom. Then we back it off 2 turns. It's a little bit awkward position. Last piece that goes in is this. I have replaced the sealing here. Before installing the valve body, we need to replace the sealer here. Looks like this. There is a new one in the master kit. There you go. So what we need to do now is to install this, and as well here we have a sealer where the axle, the kick down axle, is actually sealing here. Like that. We have a little spring and a ball. Every bolt will be tightened down with the correct specification. last part that goes in here is this spring. I had to go and find a new snap ring here, and luckily I had some extra, and it locks the kick down axle in correct position. You might want to try it. If it works, you should have like a spring motion here, then it's okay. If you're unlucky and this drops down and it goes beyond the level where it should be, then it doesn't work. But now this is the correct function. So installing this, you don't have to worry that much about this because it only fits in one direction. ladies and gentlemen, the service, I wouldn't call it restoration, but at least the service is done. Everything worked just fine. We had no major issues. What remains is to fit this tube, but I won't do that until it's time to install the transmission. Now the transmission is going to sit here and wait to be installed in the yellow barn find behind you. So thank you for watching. I hope you find it useful, the video or part of it. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.